The first thing that happens when you arrive at the airport in Guayaquil is you start complaining either in your head or out loud about how hot it is. I remember actually down the road seeing missionaries get off at there. That you had there's air conditioning in the airport, but when you get there, you don't think there's air conditioning. And I used to tell that to missionaries, be like, "This is a nice building. It's nice and cool inside here." No, it's not. It's terrible. And then you get outside, and then you really start dying. It's hard to breathe. But that's just kind of the climate of Guayaquil. You kind of get used to it, like a little bit, but never 100%. It's just always hot there. When I arrived October 16th, and right around then they have a holiday. It's like called el Día del Escudo, which is kind of like Flag Day. And so everywhere there was Ecuadorian flags, and I remember I kept trying to ask somebody why that was, and they either couldn't understand me or didn't know why. But that was my first impression, was this is a very patriotic country. But it was mostly because of that holiday, although they do love their country a lot. We went to training, and then after we left, I mixed up my suitcase with my MTC companion. He was going off to a different area, but we had the same brand of suitcase. Luckily, we caught that, and we were able to drive back and exchange suitcases because I was going to a town called Zamora, which is 12 hours outside of Guayaquil by bus. We drove all that night. That was my first night in the mission. I didn't get to sleep in a bed. I got to try and sleep in a very hot bus, and we just drove forever and ever and ever. And we finally got to this town, and it was this beautiful city up in the mountains. And we took a taxi to this house, and we got inside the house, and it was actually a very nice apartment. I was surprised, and I was down to live there. There was a couple of other North American elders there, along with my trainer. But we got to sleep for a couple hours then. But then when we woke up, I realized it wasn't my apartment. It was the zone leader's apartment, and we weren't even in the correct city yet. And so then we got to go over the mountains, and I think I got a little bit of altitude sickness or something. I felt a little strange, but on the way back down, it was fine. The mountains there, the Andes, they're absolutely beautiful. It's like the Emperor's New Groove, essentially. They're just these green, pointy mountains with clouds covering them. And having grown up in Utah, I always thought it was strange that the mountains are called the Rocky Mountains, because I always thought all the mountains are rocky everywhere, but these ones aren't rocky at all. They're just green and covered in grass. There's hardly any rocks or boulders. In fact, I was with a Latino one time, and we saw a boulder, and he was like, "Wow, that rock is huge," and it was like maybe the size of a bed. It wasn't very big at all, but he thought it was big because there's just not very many rocks there. Anyways, so we finally got to our apartment, and it was not as nice as the zone leader's apartment. It was very small, and it was filled with cockroaches, and that was my first experience in the mission. Just wasn't too excited about the apartment, although in hindsight it was actually still a pretty nice apartment.